One of my neighbors cut down 27 overgrown white pine trees in his backyard. He gave me over 4 pounds of pine resin to play with. Well, I've got a little over 64 ounces of pine resin in these 3 bags. For me, that'll be probably a lifetime supply. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it all. Probably my first project will be to make some pine pitch glue. That'll be a project for another day. Today though, what I want to do is see if I can clean up these pine resin blobs. They're full of bugs and sticks and pine needles and bark and such. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and melt them down, see if I can filter all that stuff out. And considering how much I've got to work with today, I'm going to use some modern conveniences. I've got a hot plate, I've got a 2-quart saucepan, and a little stainless steel mixing bowl. I'm going to use the 2 of these in sort of a double boiler type of arrangement. Pine resin melts at about 170 degrees Fahrenheit, so I'm hoping this double boiler arrangement will allow me to melt these blobs without catching them on fire. Once I've got them melted down, I've got a slotted spoon that I picked up at a thrift store. I'm going to see if I can scoop out some of the bigger debris, clean it up as best I can that way. And then, if necessary, I will filter it through this stainless steel sort of coarse mesh sink strainer that I got at Walmart for a couple bucks. I'll use some pliers to pick this stuff up, and I'm going to pour it through this mesh, see if I can filter out the last little bit of fine particulate matter. And I'm going to collect it all in this flat bottom tin that I've had down in the basement for several years now. Anyway, that's kind of the general idea of what I'm going to be doing this afternoon. I've got a lot to do, so I better get started. Well, it turns out that my double boiler idea worked, but it's really very slow. It's very slow to melt. So I decided what I would do is just apply some direct heat, and I'm getting it to melt down pretty quickly now. Come in and take a look. Still working on that little bit right there. Just a little change in plans. It's all good. I did 7 or 8 more batches like that. I kind of lost count, but I was probably melting down and straining about a half a pound of that pine pitch each time. Here's the last batch. I finished melting down and sifting all my pine resin. Look at all of what I got. And this stuff over here is not waste. This is still full of flammable pine resin and all the organic material, the bugs and the pine needles and such that I pulled out. I'm going to remelt this and roll it up on some sticks and use it as fire starter, so stay tuned.
Jesus, you got crystals in here 2 inches, 3 inches long. This is pure glass. You're a goddamn artist.
Well, I've been at this project for about 3 hours today and I'm getting kind of tired. I'm ready to quit for a while. Instead of taking the time to roll this resin that's full of organic material up on sticks to make fire starters, I decided what I would do is just melt it down and pour it out on this board and let it cool down overnight, and then tomorrow I'll break it up into fire starters, sort of like you'd break up chocolate bark. But anyway, I'm gonna call it a day, and I'll pick up again tomorrow.
If you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. Before I sign off though, I thought I'd offer a few concluding remarks. First of all, I've made small quantities of pine pitch glue in the past, and to do that I've had to melt down small quantities of pine resin, but I've never worked with 4+ pounds of this stuff. So prior to starting this project, I kind of thought through my procedure and the steps that I would follow. But once I got into it, I realized I kind of needed to change things up on the fly, and I hope you didn't find that distracting or discouraging. The first thing I changed up was I stopped using the double boiler. The double boiler was actually working pretty well, but it was going really very slow. If I was only processing small quantities of resin, I think it would have been just fine. But I had 4 pounds of the stuff and I needed to get a move on, and so I went with direct heat. In the end, it took me more than 3 hours to get it all done, so I'm glad I made that change. Well, after 3+ hours of work, I ended up with 1.91 pounds of my clean, sifted pine resin. Here's a piece. Looks kind of like brown glass to me. It's really pretty. It's got a little bit of residue still left in it. If I ever need it cleaner than that, I can remelt it and run it through some cheesecloth. Probably my first project is going to be to make some pine pitch glue, and having a little bit of organic matter is actually kind of helpful. I hear that it adds to the strength of the glue, so I'm not going to worry about it for right now. I also ended up with 1.42 pounds of dirty pine resin nuggets that I'm going to use as fire starters. Here's one of them cut apart. Another thing I did to sort of change up the procedure that I told you I was going to follow was I said I was going to let that hot, dirty pine resin just solidify on that 2x8 that I was working with. But it occurred to me as I was cleaning up my mess that if I let that harden overnight like I said I was, I'd never get it loose. So instead what I did was I waited until it was cool enough for me to touch, and then I just kind of pulled it up and cut it into pieces with just a putty knife. Now if you've been counting, between my clean resin and my dirty resin, I'm missing about 7/10 of a pound. Now I think that that's mostly water that was evaporated as I was heating things up. This clean pine resin is still a little bit sticky, but it's not nearly as squishy as it was when I started. So I think my loss of weight is just water that evaporated during the process. To clean up, here's my mixing bowl and that slotted spoon I was working with. To clean these two up, I just banged them together after everything cooled and solidified. Pine resin doesn't stick to stainless steel very well, so mostly it just kind of flaked off. What didn't fall off when I banged them together, I just kind of scratched off with my fingers and cleaned it up pretty well. The sink strainer was another matter. It was pretty caked up, and it was not coming clean just by banging on it. So what I did, I set it in my backyard fire pit, and I lit it on fire. and I let it burn for probably 12 or 15 minutes. And then I took it inside and washed all the soot and other debris off of it, and it's ready to go. It survived to work another day. Well, anyway, I hope you'll stick around for just another couple minutes. I'm gonna light one of these pine resin nuggets on fire and show you how good it'll work as a fire starter. But otherwise, that's all I've got to share with you today. That's all for this one, folks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.